Bye, Jordan.
Goodbye.
See you on the website.
See ya.
All right, setting up our meeting. All right. So we are live, but no one can see it yet.
Okay. Hey everyone, good evening. My name is Stephen Parker. I am the political director for the John Ossoff for U.S. Senate campaign, and welcome to our One Georgia Town Hall series. I want to tell you a little bit about myself, and then I'll tell you about tonight. So I was on the 2017 campaign with John. I was his body man, which means I was essentially his dedicated staff person, and had the opportunity to be with him first thing in the morning until the last thing at night. And a lot of times during that 2.5-month period, the days started at 7 a.m. and they went all the way until 10 p.m. And we hit events back to back. And then at the conclusion of that election, I went back to practicing law. I'm a lawyer by trade. And then when I got the call that John was going to run for U.S. Senate, we had a conversation, and I quit my day job, guys, to come over and work for Good evening, everyone. My name is Stephen Parker. I am the political director for the John Ossoff for U.S. Senate campaign, and welcome to our One Georgia Town Hall series. I wanted to tell you a little bit about myself before we move on with the program. I was with the campaign in 2017. I was John's body man, which essentially means I was his dedicated staff person. So I was with him from first thing in the morning to the last thing at night. And often that meant being with him from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m., that 2.5-month special election run that we did. And so 7 o'clock in the morning, and we'd hit 10, 15 events and be done at 10 o'clock and do the same thing over each day for that stretch. After that election, I went back to practicing law. I'm a lawyer by trade. And then I got a call one day from John saying that he had come to the conclusion, to the decision that he was going to run for U.S. Senate. And we had a conversation, and I quit my job in order to be a part of this effort. So John is one of the smartest, most articulate, compassionate, passionate people I know. And it was a no-brainer for me when the opportunity presented itself to be able to join him. Prior to COVID-19, hey, John.
I'm sorry I'm late, Steve. You've been holding it down in my absence.
No, you're actually coming right in to the conclusion of my spiel. So prior to COVID-19, we were taking this series, guys, all across the state, and we've gotten a couple of in-person ones in Athens. What's up, Athens? And Columbus. What's up, Columbus? Both of those places were really good to us. And then we had to shift it to going virtual. So we're back at it, and John is going to host a number of these regional and policy-themed town halls across the state between now and November. So the format for today is John is going to address everyone for some minutes, and then we're going to do a Q&A session, and then John will wrap up with some remarks. John, you're on.
Steve, good to see you, man. How's your weekend going?
It's going well. You know, we've had to make these adjustments with being quarantined, man. So I kind of miss seeing you on the regular and the rest of the staff, but we're still making big things happen.
Did you get any downtime on Sunday?
Took a little bit. I had to, I'm right in the middle of a house renovation. So if I'm not on the campaign and I'm not sleeping, then I am painting and replacing window panes and doing work around the house. So, and that's actually relaxing for me.
And I know that y'all may not know this, but in addition to being our campaign's brilliant political director, Steve Parker is a wizard at building and renovating and enhancing his own home. You've been sanding and painting and learning carpentry, and I don't know where you have time for it. Hey, did you see, by the way, Steve, that I managed to get Uncle Nearest to shout out on Friday with Adrian White at the Dems event?
I did. That's amazing, man. Fawn and Keith Weaver will be really pleased to hear that they got a shout out from you. That's my.
Well, I want to welcome everyone and thank you for joining us this evening. I hope you all have had a peaceful weekend. I hope that amidst all of the turmoil in our country and in the world today, that you found some time with loved ones and family and friends and some solace from the work of the week, if you can. And for those of you who are working through the weekend, like my wife Alicia is so often as a doctor, thank you for your contributions. Thank you to everyone involved right now in the healthcare response. Thank you to everyone who is out there grinding and working hard to keep this country running during this extraordinary public health and economic crisis. Just much love and appreciation from me and the whole team. We know this is a trying time, and we're working really hard to adapt so that we can still connect with the people of this state.
That's right.
While respecting that public health comes first. The last thing that we want to do as a campaign, and the last thing that I want to do as a candidate, is put anybody at risk. And so we're always trying to innovate and find new ways to make sure that participatory democracy is living and vibrant, while also ensuring that you don't have to put yourself at risk to hear from a candidate, to ask questions from a candidate. So we've gotten questions from folks in every corner of the state, and I hope that y'all find this opportunity to engage directly and to hear from someone who seeks to represent you in office useful and constructive, and we'll be doing more of it. And I also want to invite you, during this discussion and afterwards, get in touch with the campaign, get in touch with the team, reach out on social media and let us know what we can do better. Let us know what you want to be seeing from us in terms of visibility. If you're not feeling like we're present enough in your community, if you feel like there's opportunities we're missing, or if you want to lavish praise on my amazing team for the great work that they're already doing, and I'm so proud of them, then we just want to hear from you. We got to keep community alive. We have to keep community life vibrant while all staying healthy, and particularly for those who are vulnerable, for our seniors. Right now in Georgia, there's some really worrying health data, and an increase in infections, an increase in hospitalizations. I hope everyone is taking precautions, wearing masks when you're out in public, avoiding unnecessary close contact with others, doing all of the things that we need to do as citizens, not just to look out for ourselves, but to look out for each other. That's really what it's all about, is we got to have each other's backs as neighbors, as citizens, as human beings. So thank you all for tuning in. I want to, get into the Q&A as fast as we can. I'll just say this right at the top. Politics right now, but politics always, is really a matter of life and death. It's a matter of the quality of governance, the quality of elected officials who represent us. And that's so vital. And I think that's being put into such stark terms right now, when we're in the midst of this crisis and we're just not getting what we deserve as citizens from our elected officials at the highest level. And whether you are a diehard Democrat or an independent or Republican or apathetic and just tuning in, however you identify yourself ideologically or politically, we just deserve better than this. We deserve clarity. We deserve a unifying form of political leadership from the President of the United States and from members of Congress. We deserve honesty. We deserve competence. And lives are on the line. And so obviously I'm here to answer your questions about how I will represent you in the Senate, but I also want to use this platform and take this opportunity to call on elected officials who right now are dropping the ball to step up and do better, because the country is depending on y'all who have that power right now to behave responsibly, not to be, I mean, what, you know, we're in the middle of this public health and economic crisis. We got the president of the United States tweeting out white power videos on Twitter. What is this coming to? It's unacceptable. And that's why this election is so important, because the record of President Trump and his allies in Congress is not one that can be rewarded with re-election. We need to step up and vote in unprecedented numbers this fall to make a change. We need a change. This is not working. And I'm looking forward to working with all of y'all who are here to persuading you if you've got questions. You know, you're doing your due diligence as citizens, hearing from candidates, asking questions, as you should. My obligation is to answer those questions. And the commitment that I make to you, and I hope we're demonstrating it here, is that I will be accessible, I will be open. As your senator, even if we don't agree on everything, I'll hear you out. I'll come out in public and defend my record and explain my votes, because that's what you're owed as citizens. So thank you all for tuning in. I'm looking forward to the discussion. And Steve, let's hear what questions the people have submitted.
There are a number of them, John, but before we do, there's been a recent surge with COVID cases. And what are you hearing from Alicia about, I mean, her sort of deepest concerns with the surge and just COVID in general? I mean, she's on the front lines. So what kind of responses are you hearing from her?
Yeah, well, thank you for asking that. I mean, as you know, and I don't know if everyone tuning in knows this, my wife, Alicia, is an OBGYN doctor. She works mostly at Grady Hospital here in Atlanta. She's a resident with Emory Healthcare. One of the interesting things about her practice throughout all this is, you know, for a while there, a lot of medical services were idled in the initial phases of this outbreak, and babies keep coming. So, you know, the OBGYN practice, it can't stop. And she and her team really had to adapt swiftly to ensure that they could support these mothers and deliver babies in a way that didn't put the family members of a delivering mother at risk, didn't put the delivering mother or a newborn baby at risk of infection, and didn't put the medical team at risk of infection, because some of these mothers who have been giving birth themselves are COVID positive. And of course, there have been the issues with scarcity of supplies, scarcity of guidance from federal officials and federal politicians that local health systems should be able to rely on. But I have been so impressed by how the medical professionals in Georgia have stepped up, have really stepped into a vacuum of political leadership, especially when the federal government has been muzzling a lot of its own public health experts and politicizing the response. Local doctors, local public health officials have stood up and done their best to provide the public with information and to adapt our systems so that, you know, public health comes first. So I'm really proud of her. And obviously she, you know, I think like all of us, is looking at these numbers in Georgia right now, and it's troubling.
Yeah.
Things are going in the wrong direction, but she's a soldier and she just keeps doing her job.
Well, she's one of my sheroes. I know the hours she works, and I'm just really impressed with her, and pray that she continues to stay safe as she's out here helping folks. We have a number of questions on various topics. The first one we'll tackle, John, is climate change. Saeem from Atlanta, Terry from Alpharetta, and Flannery from Decatur all asked questions that have to do with climate change. Saeema's question was, what is your stance on climate change?
Well, I think it's appropriate to move to the discussion of climate change after we touched on COVID-19, because what we've seen throughout this outbreak, throughout this pandemic, is the consequences when policymakers and political leaders ignore and dismiss and deny science, and ignore and dismiss scientific expertise. You know, we had global health and public health experts warning in December, January, February, early March that action needed to be taken aggressively to prepare the country for this pandemic. But our political leaders decided to dismiss that and ignore it. And the country is so much worse off for it. And even now, the lesson doesn't seem to have been learned because the guidance and advice of public health experts is still not being followed. Much the same is true about climate change. There's an overwhelming scientific consensus that if we don't get greenhouse gas emissions under control, if we don't move to clean and renewable energy sources, that the consequences for our health and our security and our prosperity will be dire. But what we're up against is polluting industries who have spent huge amounts of money and worked around the clock for decades to discredit that science and to buy the allegiance of politicians through our corrupt campaign finance system so that our political leaders don't take the steps we need to take to move to clean energy sources. The solution is not a mystery. The solution has been known for decades. We need massive investment in clean energy and renewable energy and non-carbon emitting electricity production to reduce America's carbon footprint. Right. And we need to take a leadership role internationally to help move the rest of the world in the same direction. Instead, we're the laggard. We're the country that's dragging our heels. And that's not the role America should play in the world. And if we don't get our act together and solve this problem, then future generations are going to condemn us for our incompetence, for our selfishness, and for our greed. The good news, and I know that was a little bit of a bleak backdrop to paint, but the good news is that there's never been such a broad consensus as there is right now that we need to act. 75% of Georgians support a historic infrastructure bill with massive investment in clean energy. Because it's not just the right thing to do for our environment, it's also a huge economic opportunity. And not just for the cities in this state, for rural Georgia as well. And right now, as we're in an economic crisis with very high unemployment, that kind of infrastructure program is a way to get folks back to work, to get people job training opportunities, and to lay the foundations for decades of prosperity and sustainability.
Where do authorities on climate change fall? I mean, what's the military say about it? What do is it peer-reviewed science that also supports this notion?
Yeah, look, it's a broad consensus, peer-reviewed science. The Department of Defense, the military, our intelligence agencies, our allies. There's no doubt about this science. There's just a lot of propaganda out there from the oil and gas industry. Because when we take the action that we will take next year to make these massive investments in clean and renewable energy, that undercuts the profitability of the fossil fuel industry, of polluters, who themselves are heavily subsidized. Right? I mean, these industries have benefited from decades of public expenditure, taxpayer dollars subsidizing them. And they don't want to lose that. And they don't want to see their competitors in solar and wind and geothermal and hydropower and other new and exciting emerging technologies displace them. But the truth of the matter is it's long past time. And the commitment that I make is that in the Senate, I will listen to scientists and not lobbyists for polluting industries as we make these decisions.
Yeah, makes sense, makes sense. We have a number of questions, John, about healthcare. So Nicole from Savannah and Susan from Atlanta, Lena from Smyrna, Eileen from Marietta, Susan from Fairburn, and Kathy Woodstock from Woodstock have questions about healthcare. And I'd like to sort of give them a shout out just because folks took the time to write these questions.
Yeah,
and,
for sure.
So it's worth letting folks know who put questions in with us But Nicole from Savannah asks, what is your plan for healthcare reform? It's a broad question, so whatever angle you want to take on it.
It is a broad question, but just after talking about climate change and clean energy and the environment, I feel the thing that's so amazing about the times that we're living in is that the solutions to these problems are not mysterious. We know the steps we need to take to save our environment and fight climate change and build a sustainable economy. And we know the steps we need to take to make sure that every single citizen has great health insurance and great health care they can count on. And we're basically the only country that's as economically advanced and powerful and strong as we are that hasn't done that. We need to make sure every Georgian, every American has great health insurance that they can count on in good times and bad, whether they have a job, whether they don't, whether they have income, whether they don't, that they can count on. Health insurance that is there for them no matter what. I support putting a strong public option on the ACA exchange. It will compete with private insurers. So often dealing with these health insurance companies is like pulling teeth. You get the feeling that this whole system is set up to make it hard to file claims and get the healthcare that we need. And there's surprise billing, surprise bills that come 6 months down the road, or you find out that, you know, while this clinic was in the network, this particular doctor wasn't. The quality is low and the prices are high. So let's introduce some competition.
Well, John, for those who don't know what a public option is, like,
sure,
would you describe that for folks a bit?
Sure. So this is about giving people more choices when they're deciding what health insurance they want. And if folks want to go with private insurance, more power to them. Let's also offer them something that's run through Medicare that is there for them all the time if they want it, that is high quality, low cost, simple, straightforward, and always available. And let's give people the choice. For folks who are on private insurance, we will strengthen the consumer protections of the Affordable Care Act for women and pre-existing conditions and young people. And we also need to expand Medicaid so that no one lacks health insurance because they can't afford it. I think that this pandemic should shatter anyone's illusions that it's acceptable to not get everyone covered. We need to get everybody covered, and we can do it. It's straightforward, and countries all over the world have done it, and they've done it in a whole bunch of different ways. There's not just one way to accomplish this goal, but a public option, Medicaid expansion, stronger consumer protections. That's what I'll fight for in the US Senate, to make sure that everyone gets the insurance and the care they need at prices that they can afford. And it's amazing to me that right now during this pandemic, Donald Trump and my opponent, Senator David Perdue, are supporting a lawsuit to destroy the Affordable Care Act and its protections for people with pre-existing conditions and women and young people, could result in more than 500,000 Georgians losing our coverage in the middle of a pandemic. And my opponent, when asked about this by the press, he's refusing to even answer questions about it. Go ahead, Steve.
Well, no, I wonder what will happen if they are successful and then they come up with a new healthcare system, and then folks who have been suffering under this coronavirus now show up under a new system that the coronavirus might be considered a pre-existing condition under a completely different system.
There's not even a credible replacement being proposed. This lawsuit would simply repeal the Affordable Care Act.
Yeah. Right.
And it's gone.
Yeah.
And that will rip health insurance away from a lot of people, maybe as many as 500,000 Georgians or more, in the middle of the most serious public health crisis in the century.
Yeah.
And the reason that they are pursuing this is because of the political power of the health insurance industry.
That's right.
The health insurance industry wants to relieve itself of these consumer protections so that they're more profitable. And the insurance industry has purchased the support of politicians like my opponent, who's taken huge amounts of money from the industry. It's cynical, it's corrupt, it's wrong. And similarly, you know, my opponent opposes Medicaid expansion. It blows my mind. 75% of Georgians support expanding Medicaid so that your health is not connected to your wealth.
Right.
We have these systemic inequities in our healthcare system by class and by race here in Georgia. 80% of those who have been hospitalized with COVID-19 have been Black because of these underlying systemic inequalities. Medicaid expansion is a key part of addressing that. But my opponent refuses to endorse it. And he supports this lawsuit that would take health insurance away from people.
Well, we definitely need a champion in there that will resist those types of efforts, John. A topic, John, that's one of my favorite is voting rights. On April 6th, I submitted my application for an absentee ballot. I waited past May 6th. I waited until I think it was like the end of May or something, and my absentee ballot never arrived. And so I finally decided on a few days before the end of early voting to go down and don my mask and go down there and vote. Fortunately, I went at a time when there were just about 15 people in line, so I didn't have to participate in some of the horror stories I've heard, and I think you've got one. But this next question, it comes from Nancy in Atlanta and Kelsey in Atlanta. Kelsey says, I waited almost 4 hours to vote. How do you plan to respond to voter suppression as well as encourage Georgians to stay in line and cast their vote, John?
Yeah. And you know this, Steve, that Alicia and I had the same experience as you.
I know.
We put in our absentee ballot applications a month before the election. I'm on the ballot. And we never got our ballots.
That's right.
Well, that's not quite true. I wrote the county, called the county. They finally said, well, they may have lost our ballot application, but they were going to put one in the mail. We received it literally on election day.
Right.
We had already, just like you did, realized, hey, we might not get this and we need to go and vote. We went on the last day of early voting and we stood in line for 4.5 hours to vote. And a lot of people were disenfranchised. That's the bottom line. What happened in Georgia was a disgrace.
Yeah.
And this is like the basic responsibility of the people we elect. To hold an election that's fair, that lets everyone vote, just like their basic responsibility is to keep us safe during a public health emergency. It's remarkable that our government is failing us at such a basic level, and it doesn't have to be this way. And I think it's one of the reasons that we saw such massive turnout, even in the face of all those obstacles.
That's right.
Is that there's this broad recognition that this is unacceptable. It doesn't have to be this way. And we still have the power to make a change. Because I
was about to have heartburn over the fact that the lines were so long or people weren't getting their absentee ballots and thought, you know, these numbers might not be where we need them to be. And we're very fortunate that we actually broke some records, didn't we?
We broke records despite the fact that all of these failures, no doubt, disenfranchised a lot of people.
Yeah.
And we broke, I mean, it was like not even close, record-breaking turnout. And it's the paradox of it, right? Is that the performance of our elected officials is so bad,
right, that
it's inspiring people to vote in record numbers because it's so obviously unacceptable.
Yeah. If people stayed in line for like 8 hours in some places. John.
8 hours.
Yeah.
In the rain.
In the rain. That's right. It was a rainy day. That's right.
And it's not like it's just COVID, right? I mean, we see this in Georgia election after election after election.
Yeah.
And the burden is on Georgia's Secretary of State to do this right, the chief elections officer in Georgia. In terms of what our campaign is doing about it for folks who are tuned in, and what we recommend you start doing now to ensure that your vote counts and that you can cast your ballot, even if we remain in a public health emergency down the road. First of all, you can actually go ahead and request your general election absentee ballot now. And I believe my team is posting tomorrow an update to the voting page on our campaign's website with the information about how to do that. The second thing to note is that we have, with Fair Fight, Stacey Abrams' organization here in Georgia, one of the most capable voting rights advocacy organizations in the world, based right here. And they are in court right now, protecting Georgia voters and holding the state accountable. And Stacey is out there advocating constantly for more resources so that we can hold these elections properly, because it's just unacceptable to make citizens wait 1 hour, let alone 8 hours to vote. So what everyone needs to be doing right now is beginning to make a plan to vote in November. Don't wait. Go ahead and get moving and planning on getting your absentee ballot. And then we would love to get you involved to help us reach out and educate voters about how they can make a plan, how they can protect ourselves. We got volunteer opportunities for folks who want to make phone calls, send text messages, help with poll watching, help hold the state accountable, and all of that. And signing up for volunteer opportunities can be found at electjon.com, electjon.com.
So Kelly from Tucker, Lori from Brookhaven, and from Ackworth, there's the answer to your question. They had questions, John, related to whether they should pursue getting their absentee ballots or whatnot. And you just sort of covered that in your response.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. A number of people want to know, what are you going to do? What are your priorities, John, day one when you get in the Senate? I want to give the shout out to the people, because between healthcare and what are your legislative priorities, those are the two biggest, or the topics that got the most questions. So Kay from Atlanta, Sandra from Albany, Heidi from Fayetteville. Is it Fayetteville or Fayetteville, Heidi? Cheryl from Conyers, Amy from Sandy Springs, Janet from Atlanta, Maggie from Canton. So Cheryl from Conyers says, what will be your priorities as a senator? What issues will you focus on that will benefit Georgians the most?
Okay, let me break it down in a really concise and straightforward way for y'all. We're in the midst of a healthcare and an economic crisis. My top priorities will be making sure every single Georgian has great health insurance and the healthcare they need, and rebuilding our economy, not by bailing out corporate America and investment banks, but by investing in families and small businesses first. The bottom line is that we need to be healthy, and we need to have the opportunity to prosper and to flourish economically. These are the basics in life. These are the basics that every single citizen deserves: health, opportunity, prosperity. And even before COVID-19, here in Georgia, we were in the midst of a health crisis. Among the highest maternal mortality rates in the country, one of the highest rates of uninsurance in the country. Even before this economic crisis resulted in so many people losing their jobs, we had nearly 1.5 million people in this state who didn't have health insurance at all. It's totally unacceptable, and it doesn't have to be that way, and it's no mystery how we solve it. We will make sure every single citizen has great health insurance, no matter their wealth, and we will invest in economic opportunity for all. What we are seeing right now in terms of the economic response to this crisis just showcases how corrupt the political system is. Because there are trillions of dollars in cash and loans going to Wall Street banks and going to the biggest corporations in America right now. And let's be clear, having a strong banking system, having robust major enterprises, that matters. That's important. But we've got folks right now who are facing eviction, bankruptcy, who can't go out and borrow billions and billions of dollars on international debt markets and who aren't getting overnight support from the federal government like these huge companies are. And ordinary people who are suffering and small businesses that are suffering are getting so little compared to those who have lobbyists in Washington, compared to those who spend huge amounts of money on political contributions. So we need to put households and small businesses first in American economic policy. And we need to buttress that with the kind of infrastructure program that we were just talking about, because that will create millions of good paying jobs and job training opportunities here in Georgia and across the country. Healthcare and prosperity. And then we also, I think we are aware here in Georgia, maybe more profoundly than anywhere in the country, with the killing of Ahmaud Arbery, the killing of Rayshard Brooks, and all the issues we've just been discussing, the barriers to voting rights, the voter suppression that we see here in Georgia year after year after year. We need to make a national effort to strengthen civil rights and voting rights at a level that hasn't been seen since the early 1960s. We need a new Civil Rights Act. We need a new Voting Rights Act. We need profound criminal justice reform. We need to reform policing in America. And we need to make sure that states like Georgia cannot suppress their own voters for cynical partisan reasons. So let's make sure every citizen has great health care. Let's give everyone a shot, an equal shot to prosper. Let's protect voting rights and civil rights. There's the agenda.
All right. Well, John, you mentioned building a strong economy, and recently, again, with COVID-19 running rampant, the Congress had to come up with a plan for propping up the economy. And some of it looked like corporate bailouts. Some of it looked like stimulus package for individuals. What was Senator Perdue's position, and what did he support?
Yeah, this is a good opportunity to talk about Senator Perdue's record. Like putting it in the context of this pandemic. Here's what Senator Perdue is doing during this pandemic. He is backing a federal lawsuit to take health insurance away from his own constituents. And then he came out and said he opposed the one-time $1,200 relief checks for working Americans. It could not be any clearer where this man's priorities are. He's fighting for his donors. Like so many politicians in Washington, he's fighting for his donors. And because ordinary people don't butter his bread and don't fund his political machine, he doesn't seem to care. Taking health insurance away from people during a pandemic, waving through hundreds of billions of dollars for corporate America while saying you oppose a one-time $1,200 direct aid check for working people.
Mind-boggling.
It is mind-boggling. It's wrong. It's inconceivable to me that these are his priorities, and yet they are. And it reflects the deep corruption of our political system. But it's not really surprising when you look at how David Perdue operates.
Right.
Because this is a guy who literally sells meetings for corporate PAC checks. Lobbyists who cut this guy a $7,500 corporate PAC check, they get like quarterly meetings, they get private island retreats, they get access to the senator's home.
Yeah.
When you can buy access in that way, it's no surprise that that's who he's looking out for, because that's who he relies on to fund his campaigns. This is also a guy who, as this pandemic was bearing down on our country, was buying stock in a manufacturer of medical protective equipment, was buying stock in a company making a coronavirus vaccine while he was dumping his shares in casinos and hotels. Instead of getting the country ready, the whole time praising Donald Trump's obviously incompetent response. It's hard to fathom. And I don't think the people of Georgia are going to stand for it when it comes time to judge whether this man deserves re-election in November.
I don't either. It's shameful. It gets my blood boiling all over again, man. Really shameful.
Yes, it is.
So moving to another topic, John, we've got probably another 10 minutes or so. So we'll get through a few more of these questions. Sandra from Smyrna has a criminal justice reform question. What is your plan to correct the racially dysfunctional criminal justice system?
Yeah, so I think that first of all, we need to just speak plainly about the racism in the criminal justice system. And here in Georgia and across the country, it's so apparent, it's undeniable. It's not new, it has to stop. The US Constitution guarantees every citizen equal protection under the law, but it's not a reality in America. When a young Black man in Glynn County can be murdered in the street by so-called vigilantes, and then local police and prosecutors just turn a blind eye and look the other way, and it takes a national movement to begin turning the wheels of justice for this young man. And he's one case of so many of Black people who have been killed, for whom there has never been justice. When we look at the systemic bias in criminal justice in America, it's shameful. And it has to stop. And we need bold criminal justice reform to put an end to it. And so when I talk about the need to pass a new Civil Rights Act, specifically what I mean is empowering the Civil Rights Division at the Department of Justice to hold local government accountable to uniform standards of civil rights, constitutional rights, and human rights. That means use of force policies. That means identifying and punishing where there is racial bias in policing or prosecution or sentencing. It means having strong and high national standards so that the equal protection under the law that is guaranteed all citizens by the Constitution is a reality.
Well, I was watching TV the other day, John, and the story about that kid, his last name was McLean from Colorado, where he had a ski mask on and was carrying a white bag, and they pulled him over, and it broke my heart, man. I've had moments where I've sat and thought about George Floyd and Ahmaud, and all of these incidences keep sort of tenderizing my heart, you know. And then I laid in bed and I watched that, and it broke me. I sat there and was emotional. Elijah McClain was his name. And I sat there and I was emotional for a moment because when you hear the backstory about how he used to play the violin for cats, and he was pleading with the officers at that moment that I'm just different, you know, and what did I do? And to find out that he had a sort of a social anxiety issue, but then they subdued him, and then they put drugs in him, and then he died. Like it makes you just, there's a book makes me want to holler, you know, it just makes me want to scream sometimes. And I'm really hopeful that people like yourself and others who will get in and really tackle these issues will tackle them in a way that we can move on from some of the damage that this has done to individuals and to race relations and to police relations and all of it, you know?
Yeah, man, so many tragedies, so many families that have had loved ones ripped from their arms. For what? I mean, yeah, Elijah McClain was just walking home from getting a iced tea.
That's it. Yeah.
For his brother. And just walking down the sidewalk, and a half hour later dead.
Yeah.
And people are only talking about that case now because there has been and is growing this massive movement. But there are so many names that aren't yet ringing out that must. And I think that another part of what making this right has to be is looking backward at cases where there was never justice,
Right.
and making those right, and ensuring that there is accountability retrospectively.
I hope that's the next wave, John, that folks will really start calling for that.
Yeah, it's not enough just to take the steps we must take to keep this from happening again. We need to make sure that justice is done in every case, for all of those cases that are sitting there waiting for justice.
That's right. That's right.
Families waiting for justice.
That's right. But there's another question in sort of this police reform area. Gwendolyn of Clarkston, Patricia of Jonesboro, and Rachel of Mableton. So Rachel of Mableton says, with the recent passing of the Georgia Hate Crimes Bill, how will you continue to advocate for racial justice and police reform while bringing Georgians together as a community? Sort of touched on it, but if you want to say anything more about that.
Yeah, well, I mean, we talked about the policy piece and the need for a new Civil Rights Act, which will include criminal justice and policing reform. And we've just also talked about the need for justice for all those whose names have not yet rung out on social media, and whose families never had their day in court, never got the attention that they deserved, who had loved ones taken from them.
Yeah.
I think that it was Gwendolyn.
It was, this question was from Rachel.
Okay, well, I think that, you know, what Rachel put at the end of her question about how we bring the community together to achieve these goals is a good question. And the beautiful thing is that I think it's happening. Because yeah, there are some right-wing politicians who are trying to make this into a wedge issue. But overwhelmingly, it is a broad and multiracial and diverse coalition of people, international.
That's right.
Who just, you know, are demanding change, who are protesting, and who aren't fooled by the attempts to distract from this or politicize it, but recognize that we urgently need change, that requires policy change. That means holding politicians accountable. And if they won't do it, it means voting them out and voting in people who will. And if the folks that we vote in don't do it, we vote them out too.
And get out as well. That's right. That's right. Thomas from Atlanta, John, has a question around COVID-19 and the economy. This also may be one that you touched on a bit, so if there's anything further to say about it. What do you think of the federal economic response to COVID-19 so far?
Yeah, I mean, look, we hit on it. I think that, you know, it's in a moment of crisis that you can really see how power functions in a society. And just like in 2007, 2008, during that financial crisis, when so much of the pain was concentrated at the bottom, but the help went straight to the top, we're seeing the same thing right now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We're seeing huge, like, amounts of money flowing to corporate America that I think would shock most people if they heard more about it. When you compare it to what small businesses have had to go through to get PPP funds, and that program, by the way, also has been exploited by larger firms. And when you compare it to a single $1,200 check for working people, which my opponent opposed.
Yeah.
We need to put people first. And the federal response just reflects the power dynamic in America, a broken and corrupt campaign finance system where organized trade groups with huge resources to spend influencing policy just buy policy from Congress and the federal government and ordinary people don't have a voice. And it speaks also to the need for campaign finance reform, for ending Citizens United, for getting rid of corporate PACs, and for empowering individuals, ordinary people, to decide who represents us.
Right. Okay. John, we're going to end on a lighter question.
Okay.
And it is a question from Arla at Noonan, but I'm going to add a twist to Arla's question. So
Did you say in Noonan?
Arla and Noonan. That's right.
Nice. Alicia and I got married in Noonan.
Sure did. That's right. So her question is, who are your heroes? And I'm going to add a twist to Arla's question. So I'm
Okay.
going to keep it general. So answer her question generally. And then I might ask maybe to identify a family member or a friend who you kind of put in that category. And I guess there may be crossover, but I'm suggesting that you distinguish them. And then finally, you and I are huge Star Wars fans. So I also want you to pick a hero in the Star Wars universe, and it could just be someone that you admire. So it doesn't have to be technically your hero in the Star Wars universe, but one of your favorite characters.
Man, you should have given me notice on that.
Well, this is how I end these things. Keep your
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and for those watching, yes, Steve and I are both huge Star Wars fans, and we've made peace with the fact that Stacey Abrams is a Star Trek fan. So, well, okay, let me start with family, and this is an easy one for me. I've got to talk about my mother, and a lot of folks don't know this, but my mother is actually an immigrant who came to the United States when she was 23 years old. And she became a successful business person. She was a green card holder for decades. Then she became a citizen when I was a kid. She was active in the feminist movement and the women's rights movement, marching in the 70s for equality. And she's an activist now. She helped found an organization that gets women from both political parties elected to local office across Georgia because she's passionate about that. And what's happened in America in the last 4 years has been heartbreaking for my mother, like it has for so many, because she came here, she immigrated to this country because she believed in an idea of America, an idea that has not ever been fully realized, but an idea that we all have been working to advance and realize. And what we have all seen in these last 4 years has been an attack on that idea, has been an attack on the idea that this is a country where anybody can get ahead, where you come from, what language you speak, your race, your background should not impair your opportunities, your prospects, should not deny you respect. We've seen this emergence of political leadership in America that is contrary to all those values. And I think that is a big part of why we're seeing such participation in our democracy right now. And so much voting is because people are standing up to reject that whole ideology that Donald Trump stands for. And she hasn't given up. She's out there putting signs in yards and, writing postcards and working hard. Because even though these have been a really difficult few years, the wind is at our backs. We have a lot of momentum right now, and we're on the right side of history. And the majority of the country, the majority of the state, overwhelmingly people are good people. Most people want the same things out of life. Most people want decent, competent, ethical government. We deserve these things, we can have these things. And I'm proud of my mom for not giving up and for setting that example for me. In terms of other heroes, I want to just show this This is a Mike Lukovich cartoon. Mike Lukovich obviously is a celebrated political cartoonist. This is called The Bridge, and it depicts Congressman John Lewis with his body bridging the gap so that the people can cross over to vote. And you know, it's symbolic of the march across the Edmund Pettus Bridge in Selma, Alabama, and of how he put his body on the line to secure voting rights for all people. And Congressman Lewis is a hero of mine, has been my mentor, and you know, I wouldn't be running in this race without his support. When I first went and worked for him, I was very young, and he didn't have to take me under his wing. He's a busy, powerful person with a lot of responsibilities, but he has always put young people, he's always recognized that shaping that next generation of leaders is a critical part of leadership in the moment. And to have his mentorship for the last 17 years has been truly formative for me. And right now, like so many, I'm just praying for his speedy recovery and his good health. And you also put me on the spot, Steve, on the Star Wars hero.
Yeah.
And I'm just trying to think about, you know, what really meets the moment right now. Because, you know, I infamously depicted Han Solo in college, right. a depiction that the GOP has seen for some reason fit to put in TAC ads. Apparently they must not be familiar with the franchise.
Yeah, that's right. Or or the results of doing that in 2017, right?
Yeah, we'll see if the Han Solo ads return. I hope so.
Yeah.
So folks at the GOP who are watching, please run those ads again.
Please run them. Please.
I think that at times like this, when there's a lot of distress about the state of the world, a lot of passion, I think what we need is wisdom. So Steve, at this moment, I'm gonna just give a shout out to Yoda. Get through this, we will. Get together.
I love it. And John, on that note, that's probably a good way to end. We will get through this, y'all. Are there any other closing remarks, John? Otherwise, we'll see these folks at the next one.
Look, I just want to thank everyone for tuning in and for sending in questions. And thank you, Steve, for doing such a great job moderating. We will continue to do our best to run an open and accessible campaign and to reach out across the state and to give folks an opportunity to ask me questions, to ask the team questions. I would note that my opponent still in his 5.5 years as a US Senator has not once held a public town hall. I don't think that's the right way to represent the people of the state. We're gonna keep holding town halls, and we're gonna continue to answer to the people. So much love, everybody. Stay healthy, be well, reach out to the campaign, reach out to me, hit us up on social media, and have a wonderful rest of your Sunday.
Good night, everyone. See you at the next one.
Good night.